don't know. It just you seem pretty cool.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Well,
Mm.
we are live. We are live. We are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hits and Heels. It is Wednesday night. I have my favorite co-host, my husband, Coach Bryant. I am Coach Terry Bryant. I am a football coach thanks to this guy. Me and my co-host Danny Wright came up with Hits and Heels because we were having conversations as female football coaches. And so we decided to kind of just create a podcast. And the podcast has kind of evolved where I absolutely love showcasing um, athletes and their stories. And so, of course, today's story is a former UK player. He plays the same position that our son plays at the University of Kentucky. He played in the NFL. He's from Lexington. We just inducted him into the Lexington African American Sports Hall of Fame. And I want to shout out the Lexington African American Sports Hall of Fame for sponsoring Hits and Heels today. And Winston, thank you so much for coming and telling your story on His and Heels today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a blessing being on here. So I'm ready.
You ready? You ready? So let's start. You're from Lexington, Kentucky, and you went to Lexington Catholic.
Correct.
Okay, so what district were you supposed to be in? And why did you go to Catholic as opposed to the city school?
I was in the Brown Station district. So at that time I was living in Winburn on Costigan Drive. So I went to Winburn Middle for my eighth grade year. Before I went to Winburn, my um area school, I went to the Academy of Lexington. So I went to the Academy of Lexington for 2 years, my sixth grade and seventh grade year. How I got in that school was it had something to
I
do
was
with
I've
my
never heard.
I was about to ask that question.
I have never heard of that.
How'd you get in that school?
uh my aunt's kids went there. I think it was in elementary at the time,
Okay.
and my I guess my parents was like they was trying to figure out. They really didn't want me to go to Winburn because of the kids in the neighborhood. So we was like, well, he probably had a better chance of going to the academy. So I don't really know how I got in, but I ended up going there for the 2 years. But they didn't have an eighth grade um school line, so it was only
Okay.
from elementary all the way up to seventh grade. So my eighth grade year, I ended up having to go to Winburn Middle, and I think it was like a couple of teachers. My math teacher from the academy went to Winburn, so I had him as my math teacher my eighth grade. But yeah, going to Winburn, man, was a major challenge. That was a major challenge for me, just all across the board. And to be quite honest, man, I didn't even think I would make it through that school for real, because it was a lot. I mean, just the people I grew up in the neighborhood with, I had to kind of deal with that on a day-to-day basis anyways. So, man, I was in trouble a lot, to be honest with you. I don't even know how I
Really?
even, yeah, I stayed in trouble. I mean, I
Now,
probably
now,
my eighth grade year was probably the most I had, the most butt whoopings.
well,
I mean,
I was about to say, Winston, and like a lot of times I call you Junior based on your dad,
yes,
right?
sir.
That's why I always said Junior, because I know your dad very well, and I'm sitting there going, when you said you got in trouble, and if you'd have saw my look on my face, like, wow.
Oh yeah, it was peer pressure. Really, it was tough because I mean, there was a lot of people that went to Bryan Station from Winburn, and luckily though, even though I had a tough eighth grade, I had people in the that worked there kept me in check. I had Miss Stevenson was the principal,
Yes.
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 and I believe was Mr. Barnes there. I think Mr. Barnes might have been there too. I'm not sure. I think he might have been assistant principal. And then we had I played for Coach Hardaway. So I played
Yeah.
basketball my 8th grade year. I played with Coach Hardaway. So that definitely kept me in check for real because I wanted to play basketball so bad. So it wasn't really the academics too much. It was more just behavior. I couldn't stay out of safe. It was just too much, man. I was just,
Okay, what
clowning.
was causing all of that? Because we have some
Product. I
kids.
was I was a product of my environment.
Gotcha.
Even though I had, even though I was
And
blessed
you
to have
had
my,
good parents.
yeah,
Mhm,
even though I was blessed to have my mom and dad, I grew up in a married home, and
mhm.
the discipline and structuralism was really kind of military because my grandfather was military. So my grandmother has 8 children, I believe. So my dad is one of 8. He's the baby boy.
Okay.
So um that's kind of where a lot of the disciplinary came from was my grandfather. So that military background, like my dad didn't play those games. So he was one of those fathers where like if I got in trouble and he could clock out of work, he would come right up to Windburn and he would come right up to Windburn,
Ooh,
take
we
me
need
right
more
in the
parents like that.
he'll take me right in the conference room, and
And
I would
talk
get
to you.
my I would get my licks, and he was like, "Hey,
And
Winston,
talk to you.
I'll see you when you get home." So that was a challenge, but I think the big thing for me was I had people that worked there that really wanted to see me succeed, and I think they kind of I wouldn't necessarily say like I don't know, you just know how like certain people just see good things
Shadow.
in
That's
people
enough.
and they want to see good in people in the future. I was like one of those kids at that time, just kind of wanted to see me. So like, I guess going through that phase, my 8th grade year at Winburn, my dad worked at Lexington Catholic. So my dad
Oh.
had been, yeah. So my dad was already working in the Lexington Catholic system way before I even got there. So around when I was in middle school and stuff, I used to go up to Lexington Catholic a lot and help my dad work and stuff.
Mhm.
So I used to be around a lot of the people there. So I used to be around like Duna, Demetrius Green played at Catholic. I was around Coach Tubby Smith's son played there too as well. I was there with what's his name? Harrison Morton, I believe. I think his name. So it was a lot of good athletes. I think Mark Logan's nephew, I believe, went to Catholic. Uh
My,
Brandon Logan with the Catholic.
okay.
So I was around a lot of people that my dad knew. So um and being a Catholic was kind it felt like a college to me for real. And I was like, yeah, I was like, I want to go to this school. I was just a kid looking at the dreams, like, man, I would love to come to this school and play. So my dad kind of already had it in his mind, like, man, you're not going to Brown Station. There is no way that I could go there and survive just based off of the stuff that I was already going through in the community. So, I mean, I had a great childhood. Like I grew up just like any other kid. The only difference was I was just one of selected few at Winburn that had a father. That was the biggest
Mm,
thing. And I grew up with a lot of kids that didn't have that. So they run in the streets, and I ran along with them too as well, but I knew the rules. So trying to do things and knowing mom and dad don't know, and then I get caught. Oh, it's a whirlwind with that. So as a kid, you grow up, you play the Russian roulette. So
Yeah.
I knew and there was a jurisdiction in Winburn because Winburn is a big community. So there was a
Yes.
and I lived off of Costigan Drive, so I'm all the way in the
That's,
back.
yeah. You was in the
mhm.
So I'm
back. Yeah.
I'm all the way in the back. So being at the age that I grew up out in Winburn, there ain't no way my parents would catch me all the way in the front of Winburn or just like in places I ain't really supposed to be in because to be quite honest with you, Winburn was a hostile environment. People don't
Mm,
know that it was a really hostile environment, meaning not as much as like violence, like gun violence and things like that. It was more a hostile environment where like you out of the jurisdiction in the area and you get caught up and you might be getting in fights
Mm-hmm.
or somebody
Right.
might try to gang you or something like you just out of territory. And that's how it was. So I was real cute just going to certain places because I just know how it can be. And I'm the one out of two. I got a younger sister, but I'm the oldest brother. So you gotta think going against a lot of kids in the neighborhood that had older brothers, middle brothers, and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that can go on in the community and things like that. So I kind of knew the rules and stuff like that. So, but not to say that I still had a pick of the litter with a lot of things. So my dad just didn't want me to go be in that, and like he knew my potential. He knew the sacrifices he needed to make for me. But I mean, my pops was like the neighborhood guy. Like my dad coached pretty much everybody I grew up with.
It was
My
coached by
dad
your
had
dad.
them. It was coached by
Mm-hmm.
Well,
my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Winston, my question is during that period of time, um, real quick question, it's easy, is what was the backlash of you leaving your circle, if you will, and
Hmm.
going to Catholic?
As opposed to
Okay, because
station.
you got to understand at that time I'm coaching, and I remember, if you remember, your dad called me and said my son's gonna be this, and I looked at him and then I saw you. I said, yeah, he's gonna be that. And but with that said, is what was the backlash, real quickly, of leaving your boys, if you will, your fellas? I'm sorry if you're getting in trouble with you; they're still your boys. And what was their backlash that you going to Catholic? Because at that time, Catholic was different, right? And you just said that.
Um, I would say the backlash would be more of like the everything I grew up in, like the environment that I grew up in, I kind of trickled off to
Okay,
Catholic.
was you
So
still living where you lived when you went to Catholic, or did you move?
nah, we moved after my eighth grade year. Was
Okay,
it? No, halfway through my eighth grade year, we moved from Winburn and we moved out to Mary Todd.
okay, all right,
So I lived out Mary Todd. So I kind of was away from. I grew up. I mean, I was pretty much in Winburn almost like 10 years. So
right,
I left Winburn, went to Mary Todd. So halfway through Mary Todd, I was catching a bus to go to school. So I had to walk to school no more like I used to. So I was
Mm-hmm.
catching the bus to school. So after eighth grade year, I went to Catholic living from where I was at. So I was no longer in like the Winburn jurisdiction no more. So I was really kind of like the other towns, like by what was it, like the Paris way, going off of
yeah,
Paris Road.
Mm-hmm.
upper North Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was a different pick a litter of people, different environment. It was a little bit more chiller, and that was just kind of how courses went, really. And my dad, even though the years he was at Catholic, um, my dad left Catholic after my sophomore year. So I was only with my dad for 2 years at Catholic, and then I
I
was
didn't know that.
pretty much so. But my freshman year at Catholic was tough because it was a predominantly white school.
Yeah.
I'm used to different rules, like it's a whole different ball game change, and it was a culture shock for me, and like I was getting in a lot of trouble at Catholic for real, to be honest, just following the rules,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
having your shirt tucked in and all that kind of stuff.
right, but one of the biggest things when you went to Catholic at that time was, like, I love how you said that, the different rules. And what people got to understand, it's sort of like going to East End to going to West End. Each area has their own rules. So when you went to
Hmm.
Catholic, was one of the big things was adjusting to not as much, like you couldn't be aggressive, because then they looked at you as being over aggressive. But at Winburn area, you being you was a normal thing. Does that question make sense to you?
Yeah, it was different because I was around a bunch of white kids. So that's where it really boiled down to.
That's just real talk. Yeah.
I was around a bunch of white kids, so it was
After
like,
growing up in Winburn,
Yeah, that'd be
yeah,
different.
it was different. So I was
different.
like, hold on, like these, like they're a lot of privilege. So I was like,
Mm,
oh shoot, like, I mean, I can't say that because there's been plenty of people of my color that's been at that school, but it was just different for me because I'm like, man, I'm coming out of Winburn over here to an all-white Catholic school, and like these kids, fresh, whatever age they're in. I mean, shoot, by the time you're 16, you be driving. So a lot of these kids have BMWs and stuff like that. And it was different. It was different. So, like, for a lot of people, I went through a lot of like just things within that time because I was ashamed. I wouldn't necessarily say ashamed, but you gotta think from a black kid from an all black community for all those years. My whole entire family is from Lexington. Growing up, I was
hmm
everywhere, East End, West End. I mean, you could name it. My family was spread out, so I've been into so many different cultures, different kind of areas. So I knew a lot of stuff. So I was kind of like the jack of all trades when it came up to growing up in the community. So when I going to Catholic, it was just totally different, man. I just couldn't like my dad has I don't know, he probably laugh at this, but my dad, when he was at Catholic, he had a blue, he had a North Carolina blue Caprice Classic 4-door, and he kept it clean. My dad kept it clean. But as a kid, you'd be like, man, I'm pulling up my dad. I'm a hot. Like you're a teenager. It's that pressure, and you be like, man, I'm pulling up here. My dad got this, and he got these people pulling up in BMWs. Like, and so my dad, I used to have my pops like, hey, especially after he stopped working at Catholic. I was like, yo, dad, just drop me off. He used to just drop me off. He used to just drop me off where the cafeteria is and stuff like that. Like where the
That was
cafeteria
advice.
just dropped me off, I used to hop out the car and just walk to school. You feel me? So it wasn't never like my parents would like drop me out right in front of school like that. I felt embarrassed. And it's a lot of peer pressure from a kid, but parents is like, you all right, man. You don't worry about these kids, man. It's easy for you to say that, Dad, but like, I'm having to deal with these people in here like that. So
right.
I felt out of place for a little bit. But then eventually once sports kind of kicked in and all that kind of stuff, it became a little bit more easier on me, really.
Gotcha. Okay, so when did you know, or when did you make the decision as a family that you wanted to go to the league, and how did Catholic prepare you for Kentucky? Can you walk us through that process?
Yes. I think Catholic was more like a developmental stage for me as far as sports and academics. I would say that Catholic helped me become a better student overall. Just learning how to study, different courses and things like that, doing my homework, learning how to research. Like I had a really good foundation of like teachers and resources when it came to those kind of things. And it taught me just how to have better study, just knowing the nuances of being a student and
Hmm.
then being an athlete at that. Um, I took the necessary steps just like any other, you know what I'm saying? And like, they always have that stigma when it comes to kind of things like that, like black athletes, scholarships and stuff like that, going to these schools and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And people think like, you know, athletes get the easy ride of the grades and things like that just to play and stuff. And that wasn't even the case for me because I had to study just like any other student. Um, Even when I felt like I wasn't doing my best, I still would ask for extra credit, do extra work. I was always one of those students. So I kind of learned that the values of that, and it kind of just trickled off to um going to Kentucky really. So it was easy going, it was fun going to Kentucky. It was easy going to college. That's the thing. Like it was easy for me to go to Kentucky because I was already ready to be a student. It was
Okay.
more solely developing as an athlete. So
Mhm.
um I wish we had a chance to play like Bryan Station and Tate's Creek and Henry Clay when I was in
Hmm.
high school, because that was the criticism of a lot of stuff. Like, oh, Catholic can't compete with Bryan Station. They
Hmm.
can compete with these teams. You
But
know,
that was,
you
but you got to remember, Winston Jr., that was the era that when Fayette County banned them playing y'all. It wasn't like that Catholic didn't want to play them because you played during that era, and I remember coaching during that era that Fayette County was not playing Catholic. I don't know if you knew
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I knew that. I heard about that, but I wanted to play them. But truthfully, I mean, honestly, could we compete with those teams at that time? Yes, but I think competitively, I don't know. It's different public school systems, man. It's a lot more talent. It's a bigger pool of athletes. It's a bigger pool of just different things than going to a private school system. You know what I'm saying? When you go to a private school system, you having to really kind of find talent, and then you got to think of financial aid and stuff like that, all that kind of stuff that goes into it. So now in high school, it's a whole different world. I don't even know how the school system even do all that stuff. And I remember when I came home for the Hall of Fame thing, and me and my dad came there, we rode past Frederick Douglass, and I was like, dang, this school's like that. See, but just to see it though, it's like what student or what athlete wouldn't want to go to Frederick
Wouldn't want to
Douglass?
go there. Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? The resources, so it's so nice where it's gonna gather good teachers, good resources for stuff like
Yeah,
that, and you're gonna push products of all kind of different things. So then once you think about it, those schools compete in the state of Kentucky. It's like I think Lexington Catholic again was voted a blue ribbon school for best academics in the state of Kentucky. So when you think about it, that's what, and I wouldn't necessarily say it probably intrigues more parents and stuff to bring their students that can play sports to Catholic. I think it brings more people to come there for the academics because of the
Okay.
resources that they have for a higher percentage of students going to college.
College. Okay.
That's the big thing. So during my years of Catholic, I was seeing a lot of students going to Air Force, LSU, South Carolina. I mean, that was going all kind of places. So it kind of blew my mind that a lot of students was going to these high five power schools like that straight out of high school, especially from a private Catholic school. You wouldn't really see a lot of students going to schools like that.
I think I'm mostly impressed with you going to Catholic and going to Kentucky for the simple fact that I know after you and maybe before you, there is only a handful of players out of Lexington that have been good enough to play at Kentucky to get recruited at Kentucky, right? And so for you to come out of Catholic, which is a smaller school, I think that that was impressive. So who recruited you? Who was the coach at that time?
They before I answer that question, they they took too long. You know what I'm saying? Like Kentucky should have been the first
Really?
school. Yes. Kentucky should have been the first school to offer me, and they wasn't. The first school to offer me a full scholarship is Arkansas Razorbacks. That was the
Okay.
first. That was the first. That was the first school, and then you'd be like, well, at that time, Arkansas is better than Kentucky. So it
Right.
was kind of it was kind of like okay, but at that, to be honest with you, at that time, I wasn't even thinking about going Kentucky. To be honest with you, like I had dreams of going to Ohio State. Like I wanted to go to Ohio. There was three teams. There was three teams that I really wanted to go to, but I didn't get a scholarship. I wasn't offered. But now, if I think about if I played today, and these kids, I would have had every scholarship in the country trying to
Right.
get me as a player. But the three teams I had on my list: Ohio State, Miami, and Clemson. Those are three
Okay.
teams that I wanted to get recruited by.
And they
Ohio,
never
I love
offered.
the I loved Ohio State because I was a big fan of Jim Tressel. I love
Okay.
that team. I was a big one of my favorite players from Ohio State was Ted Ginn Jr. He was a track
Hmm.
athlete. and he was one.
They
I
know.
love Ted Ginn. Like I love the team. Like Jim Tressel seemed like one of them coaches. Like man, I want to play for him. But then I love Miami. I love the University of Miami, and I was
Right.
just like, man, I could see myself. Like I was a fan of players. Like Sean, you had some of the greatest players ever to play in college
Absolutely.
history go to that school. So I always
Hmm.
envisioned myself being part of like history like that.
Yeah.
So that was so when all that happened, I was like, man, I was sending questionnaires and stuff like that. I was doing everything I possibly could to get recruited on the pipeline, but they never, I guess, at that time it was just different. So Kentucky was the third team to offer me a scholarship. The second team was the Cincinnati Bearcats. So I went on like one visit, I believe, at Kentucky. I think a couple times. I can't even remember. I used to go to the games all the time. But
Hmm.
at that time, Coach Rich Brooks was recruited me. Coach Brooks and Coach Chuck Smith. The
Chuck.
people don't know. People don't know. Hey,
Boy
Coach Chuck
County.
Smith, he's a legend.
Yes.
Yes.
That
Boy
man is a
County.
legend. That man's a legend. Like and like Coach, I love Coach Chuck Smith, man. It's been a long
He's
time
a great
since I've
guy.
spoken to him. I'm gonna have to find a way to reach out to
No,
Coach. I
no,
think I got
I've
his
got
number.
his. I got his number.
You're gonna have to send it to me. I need to call him
Okay.
because
Yeah. His son is doing his thing in Bowling Green at South Warren here in Kentucky. Okay.
okay.
Let's go back to recruiting. Let me explain how that went back in the day. A lot of times, like Ohio State, the U, and what was the third team that you wanted? Ohio
Clemson,
State, the U,
Clemson
Clemson.
Tigers.
Here's when the thing that was taking place at that time. It wasn't that you wasn't talented enough. Obviously, you were. It was why ain't Kentucky talking to you in your state? Because I heard that a lot when I was coaching in the 90s and the 2000s. Okay,
Hmm.
we can't recruit this kid because Kentucky ain't recruiting him. Does that make sense? And I'm not saying that took place, but as a coach in high school, I heard that a lot. It was like,
Yeah,
okay, Coach Brian, we can't offer Terry Bryan a scholarship, and there's a D1 school in the SEC
Right there
right
in the
down the
back door.
street.
In the back door.
So why ain't they recruiting him? Because they're not in the top 10. And if he can ball like that, why ain't they recruiting? I don't know if that was the case, but we know you were good enough. There's no question. Then eventually they figured it out. Amen.
yeah. I mean, um, I mean, I get it. I know, I understand, but they should already know. Like, I was the third. Oh my God, I'm not gonna get into that.
It's all
I,
right, man.
I
But
It's all
think that
right.
that was one of the things that I saw when I started paying attention to Kentucky, just sports in Kentucky, because I'm not from here. Was I noticed that in the last I could probably count on one hand, there was like a drought of players from Kentucky that got recruited from Kentucky, and it seems like the kids that were in the state of Kentucky would always go someplace else. And I don't know why Kentucky wouldn't.
Well,
Because I mean,
it makes sense.
I know one in particular. They said that they didn't get an offer until um it was time to signing day. And I'm thinking like, okay, you let him go to Alabama?
But let me say this. I was fortunate. If you look at the history, I was under Jerry Claiborne. If you look at who Jerry Claiborne that turned that program around in the early 80s, they were Kentucky kids. And what it was is Winston Jr. was this is because Claiborne was from Hoptown, Kentucky, and he was the head coach. So where did he recruit from? His state,
Kentucky, yeah,
Kentucky. So he brought in a lot of Kentucky kids, all of us, Ransdale, Brian Williams, Joe Prince, Cornell Burbage, Mark Logan, Devontae Dawson. It's because he was a Kentucky boy. A lot of times coaches go into their state because they're
yeah,
more familiar with it. I might downgrade him, but that's what they did. But Jerry Claiborne got 31 out of 32 if you will, 5 to 6 stars, all staters came to Kentucky that year under Claiborne because he's from Hunting.
Yeah, yeah, because man, they should have they let uh Brendan Logan go to Michigan.
Yes. Oh my
Mm.
God, he was a bad boy.
That's what I'm
Yes.
saying. They let what's his name, Jedrick Wills go to Bama. He should have went to Kentucky.
He
He
should
should
have
have went
went
to
to
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
And
Yes.
that's who I was talking about as far as when I talked to his mom, close to his mom, and she said that he didn't get an offer from Kentucky, or they didn't come and was serious until like 3 days before signing day.
Really?
Now look
Wow.
what now look what happened. They passed up on a player, a hometown player that was a
Yeah,
first round
because
draft pick. Like,
even Damian Harris should have been at Kentucky. What's the kid that we played for? Michael Mayer that went to Notre Dame should have been at Kentucky. There's been a couple of players that were,
Well, Michael wanted to stay in the Catholic dome. That's why he went to Notre Dame because he came from Covington Catholic. So he wanted to stay in
oh,
there. That's
okay.
what he said.
I mean
That's what he said.
that makes sense. That makes sense. And Sean
Yeah,
Alexander too. Mr. Brown said, yeah, Sean Alexander too. Where did Sean go?
Boone County. He went to Boone County High School. He went to Alabama.
He went to Alabama as well, and
Yeah.
he should have been at Kentucky.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr.
yeah, that's
Brown is
like
on, and he's got lots of
th-
questions. And Mr.
that's
Brown, I see you. I'm gonna get to your questions. Okay, so when did you know? Was there a? Can you remember? Was there a day, the actual memory when you knew you were good enough to go to the next level at Kentucky, and then when you were at Kentucky, what was that transition like when you knew you could go to the league?
um I would say going into my senior year, I felt like I thought I was ready after my junior year at Kentucky. That was the year that the NFL had the lockout year. That was 2011. They had the
Mhm.
NFL lockout, and my name came up in kind of like the scouts and stuff like that. That was a year Randall Cobb went to the draft too as well. So me and Danny Trevathan was thinking about
Dang. Yeah,
leaving,
but
and
Okay.
we all thought about going, but I don't know. We was convinced. I don't know. It was. I don't know. It's weird because I think we just probably had like unfinished business, really, and
At
like,
Kentucky.
yeah. Not. I felt like. I think we all felt like we wanted to do Coach Brooks a due diligence and like graduating under his umbrella of like coaches.
Okay.
right.
So I think that was like one of the biggest reasons why we decided to come back, and then
Well,
just
how
kind
did
of
you
get.
feel? How did you feel about coming back when they had you coming on the line of scrimmage a lot your senior year? Because I vaguely remember that. I remember they had you down like a linebacker a lot. Am I correct?
Oh God, don't let me get into that, Mr. Brian. To be
Because
to be
I didn't
honest with you,
understand that. I didn't understand when they had you coming up on the line a lot and those 300 pounds was like coming at you. And that's when I became a junior. I was always a junior fan, even when you played way back in then Park and Rec. But when you would come up on the line, and I was like, well, he's going in the weight room when he get done because you was up there battling with 360-pound linemen. Am I right?
but it was easy for me though because I did it in high school. So like I knew I
Okay,
knew I knew how to play that position even though I was undersized.
very much.
Um, but
You did a good job.
I was good at it. Like I knew the rules. Like I knew just I was coached very well at Kentucky. Like, but people got to think. Coach Smith had me my senior year.
Oh, love
See,
it.
no,
Mm,
Chuck Smith
Oh,
had me
Chuck.
my Chuck Smith had me my senior year, so I was with the linebackers I was with the linebackers at linebacker room my senior year, so he taught me a lot.
okay.
But
Okay.
before that, I had Coach Steve Brown. So Coach Steve Brown taught me a lot of
Hmm.
stuff. Like,
Yeah. And he ended up
but
going to the Titans.
yeah, and to make a long story short, kind of go all the way back to the beginning, I never knew how to play safety. I never played it in high school. That's the thing. I didn't play safety in high school at all. period. I was never in the back end playing that position. So when I
But I
went to
thought that's what
Kentucky,
they recruited you as a safety.
they recruited me as an athlete.
Oh,
Oh.
there you go. We both
Yeah,
all at the same time.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so okay,
They recruited me as
As
an
an
athlete.
athlete.
So when I came into Kentucky my freshman year, they started me at corner. So I started playing corner. And when I tell you I get in the corner, I was getting flamed up. Th- They was tearing me up in practice. I was like, hold on, like I cannot cover a soul. It was, and then at that time when I did go to Kentucky, I was six, yeah, I was like 6'1", 195. So I was
That's like
small,
five
but
thirty.
soon I got into Kentucky my freshman year. We did all the training and stuff like that. I ended up getting up to like 205. I got to like 205 pounds. So I was a big corner playing on the island like that, covering a lot of good receivers. So
Hmm.
I learned how to play that position. And then when I went into my sophomore year at Kentucky, that's when my body changed. That's when like I really got into the weight room. I was really conditioning. We had a lot of different stuff. So like that's when I really started to fill out my body. That's when I went into training camp my sophomore year. That's when I knew I was ready. I knew I
Okay.
was ready. I knew I was ready
Your
my
sophomore
sophomore.
year.
Yeah, I knew I was ready my sophomore year to compete in the SEC. So,
Okay.
but my but Coach Brooks, that's my man, man. Coach Brooks gave me an opportunity to play my freshman year because I could have redshirted, but he
Okay.
was like, "Nah, we need him." But people on, even though I didn't start on defense, I played, but I was a starting kick returner my freshman year at Kentucky. I don't know if a lot of people don't know that, but I was a starting kick. So it's funny. There's a statistic at Kentucky. I'm the only player ever in Kentucky history to run. It was like a 96-yard kick return back without a score. Something crazy. It was against Georgia. It was against Georgia. I almost ran a kick return back, and I got hit at like the 5 yard line or something like that. I ran out of
I
gas.
can relate.
So that was pretty. But Coach Brooks started playing me as a freshman, man, and like I was playing a lot. I was playing special teams, and once I went into my sophomore year, I started playing free safety. I had the body and stuff, and I had really good players. Though I had really good older players like Travar Lindley was on the team at the time.
Oh, he was
We
good.
had we had Marcus McClinton.
Mm.
Uh, we had we had I'm trying to think. Um, we just had a lot of leadership role. I mean, it was a lot of people. Corey Peters was on the team, so we had a lot of different people
Hmm.
at that time. So I kind of learned a lot, just kind of how to play football and just kind of really try to be like a professional at in college. So, and I know piggyback to what you guys asked, the question you asked me, Kentucky, going to Kentucky and being an athlete, prepared me to like understand like professionalism. So like 6 o'clock workouts, uh, going to class, tutoring, all this stuff. And um the difference between my era and today's era is we was driven by the love of the game.
Hmm.
I don't know the difference between like these pool of players because I've coached, I've trained, I've seen it, and I was like, you all spoiled, you know, and like I'm built off of old school football, old school morals, like, you know, just being in the trenches and like having to really put in work to get out what you put in. And
Right.
now when you see sports, college sports, professional sports, a lot of young athletes that go into the professional sports, you see them be thrown away at a young age. A lot of these players, especially quarterbacks, the pros that get them, they will only 2 to 3 years, they like, hey, you got to be one of the best people in the league. If you're not, we're going to get rid of you, trade you. And now here we go. Our franchise is down the hill. Now we got to draft another quarterback. So you see a lot of different pools of players come in and out of professional sports. But you have things like where, well, all the colleges do this, but they'll bring back former players and stuff like that, talk to the team, especially guys that's in the NFL, especially like juniors and seniors. They'll talk to them. So I remember when Coach Brooks had retired, Joker Phillips would bring former guys like Corey Peters came in. He had different players come in, have conversation with the juniors and seniors about just kind of like the attention, like what it's going to be like if we have an opportunity to go forego our junior season and forego our senior season and go to the league and stuff like that. So we kind of got brought up, but I kind of grew into like the social media phase because when I was at Kentucky, first, middle school we had like MySpace and stuff, and then high school we had Facebook, and but then when I got into college, more of like the social. Facebook was kind of like college social networking at the time, but then he had Twitter. So Twitter was like the first thing that kind of hit the world. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember going into my junior year. Oh, yeah, it was a junior year. Yeah, going into my junior year, we had like a big old team meeting, and that was kind of preparing us for already a resume for the league. So it's like, hey
Mm-hmm.
guys, I remember Coach Phillips was like, they brought in like the athletic PR people, and they was just kind of teaching us like, hey, you guys are always going to be in the limelight. You got to be careful what you do, what you say to people. You got to be careful when you go out here and you go to these college parties and stuff like that. You got to be careful what you say on social media because they had a player. His name was Will Hill. He was a player that went to Florida. He was one of the top safeties in the country at the time. And he said something crazy on his social media. And he was basically kind of coaching us like, hey, this stuff right here, this stuff will stick to you. And he was like, all the colleges, all the professional places and businesses and things like that, corporations, they have people that work in the public relations, PR. So once you say something like this is going to stick on you. So they can go back, backtrack, find this. This is something that's going to be part of your characterism. So if you go through pre-trial where you go through, um, they have, because they have people come in all the time throughout the year. Scouts to come in, they'll talk to athletic directors, they'll talk to professors, teachers, and all kind of stuff. They already have you on the radar. So they'll come in there, ask all kind of questions. They'll want to figure out who your mom and dad is, who's raising you. They'll figure all that stuff out about you before you even go through the process. So that's where it's like you got to be what you're supposed to be in college, a student athlete. So you
Mm-hmm.
got to go good grades, the characterism, making sure all that stuff makes a difference because when the head coach and these scouts come in and they looking at so and so, they're gonna be like, well, um, they're not gonna try to lie and try to sell because their job is on the line too. So they're gonna be like,
Mm-hmm.
well, Winston's a great athlete, but I don't think mentally he's probably ready to think about going to the league or things like
Mm-hmm.
that. I think he still has some maturity to do as a college student first and as a student
Mm-hmm.
athlete before he even thinking about. And that's I'd rather have the honesty from a coach saying that to a scout than feeding them a bunch of wolves just to try to get them through the school and try to get them to the league to try to make it look good for the university because in reality you're really doing a disservice to the player because mentally he might not be ready. That's the reason why that was the second reason why I didn't decide to leave Kentucky my junior year to go to the league because I felt like mentally I wasn't going to be ready. So we talking about okay, if I left, I would have been just turned 21, and you telling me I'm going to go to the professional world and playing in a league full of grown men. Some of these grown men, that's been in the veterans.
Right.
So it's a mindset. You might be athletic, but if you don't go in there with the right mindset, like the league will chew you up and spit you out easy.
But
And they
wouldn't
don't
that go
care.
back? Wouldn't that go back to your dad and your mom and what you said in the beginning of the discipline, military, if you will, the mindset? Because they already showed you the way mentally to prepare for it. Like when you said when they had other players come in and speak to y'all. So that was just a reminder what was already installed in you back in the day from mom and dad. Am I correct?
Yes. That was more of a survivor's remorse kind of thing. You know, that's the survivor's remorse attitude. So that was more of, but still though, when you go into those professional worlds like that, it's a mental battle, man, because uh, it's like going to college and you do a lot of things, you get away with a lot of stuff, and then once you graduate, you go into the corporate world. Your boss ain't gonna call you and tell you you need to wake up and go to work.
Right.
It's your job, it's your duty. We're paying you. So when you get into the professional world, it's like, okay, yeah, mom and dad taught me this, but mom and dad really didn't give me the education on this because they probably
They
didn't know this
didn't.
kind of information. So
Right.
now I'm having to figure a lot of this stuff out. So it's like when I have conversations with my kids, when I talk to them about um financial literacy, things like
Mm,
that. So I was like, well, my mom and dad never taught me about credit cards and stuff like that. So I'm going to college
right.
thinking I'm going to get a credit card, get a credit card, and then put myself in debt. I'm like, nobody taught me like what I'm supposed to do. So I'm thinking like, well, shoot, I'm broke. I ain't got no money in college to be trying to have a credit card and think I'm gonna pay it back. See, and that's the difference between the new day age of football players and athletes to the old day because we appreciated the things that we did get. That's the
Mm,
thing. And then we had the mental capacity of appreciation the small things. So when you telling me like, okay, well, I come from nothing anyway, so I'm used to this. So you telling me, okay, all right, well, I gotta get file for FAFSA. Okay, financial aid. How much they're gonna give me? Okay, I need this because my mom and dad can't afford to pay for my cell phone bill, so I need to take care of my own stuff. So that was my mindset, the survivor's remorse, thinking of like,
mhm.
okay, I gotta start thinking on my own. I can't rely on my mom and dad because I've been doing a lot of stuff on my own as well. So um it was a lot of different things, and I know it's crazy because my story is kind of unique, and hopefully one day I'm gonna write me a book. But
Okay.
just going through the private school Catholic system, it taught me a lot. It taught me how really to survive on my own because what a lot of people don't know about me, and this is probably the first time giving you some new information on your podcast, but and I'm not ashamed to even say this, but I went through a lot. I went through a rough patch in high school, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but like at one point I was homeless. Like my mom, my dad, and my sister, like we went through a lot at that time. And switching jobs for my dad, a lot of stuff. My mom had got laid off in high school, and I was moving around and stuff like that. And there was a point where I wasn't even living at home. Like I was staying with other families and stuff like that to get through school and stuff like that. So my family fell on hard times and stuff. And prior to like sophomore, junior, senior year, like I was staying at my grandma's house, going to school and stuff like that off of Rosemary. Like it was a lot. I was staying out East End to go to school. So like I wasn't really living at home like that. So I'm pretty sure that was tough for my parents having to grit that and things like that. But I had people that cared about me that helped me through that process. So like I wasn't like your normal kid going to Catholic. You feel what I'm
Okay.
saying? So like I
Yeah.
went through a lot. So you gotta think mentally as a teenager, like I could survive on my own. So when I'm going to places like football games, and we used to go with all my teammates and stuff like that, and their parents got money and all that stuff, and we go to BW3s. I ain't got no money, so I rather not eat, still hang out with y'all. I'll wait till I get home to eat. You feel me? My mom and dad couldn't afford to give me 15, $20 here and there just to go eat. So that was kind of survivor's remorse teaching
Mm-hmm.
me that. So, but I wasn't ashamed, but it was just like, hey, I'm just a normal black kid that falls victim to majority of what families,
Go
mom,
through.
dad, or not. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
I went through that stage as a kid. So it might seem different from a parent's perspective, but it's like, well, shoot, I'm pretty sure my mom and dad went through a lot too. And there's a lot of things that my mom and dad went through that I know growing up, asking questions and stuff like that. So that's what, like, I'm cut from a different cloth. You know what I'm saying? Like I was
Right.
built, my
Mm-hmm.
mom and dad built me to go through these kind of things. So as I got older
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and when I went through my own trials and tribulations, like, yeah, it's gonna be hard, but I knew how to like pry on faith to get through a lot of things. And the blessed part about it, I had my pops too. So that helped me a lot, the guidance of that. And like
Mm-hmm.
that's why me and my dad so tight, because like every boy's dream is to have a father.
Mm.
So that
Yes.
was always that mindset. So it's like I always give my dad a hug. Me and my dad always tell we love each other, because it's like without him, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Like he put me in places, he sacrificed a lot. He guided me into places. And then when it was time for me to be my own man, I had to walk my own steps. And he knew I was ready. And I remember when I was a teenager, I was 18 years old. I'll never forget it to this day. My dad told me one day we was having like a little father son talk, and he was like, "Hey son," he was like, he apologized to me. He was like, "Hey," he was like, "Man, I'm sorry that I had to raise you quicker than your age." And
Mm.
he said the reason why I did this is because life is short. And he said I didn't know how many days number that I had living. So I wanted to make sure my son is prepared for the world before I leave. So when he said that to me, it started to make sense as I got older. So when I started
Mm-hmm.
to have my own kids and stuff like that, everything kind of clicked, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So we be having those father sons conversations. Like my dad taught me to be a man. That was what it is. Like he taught me the nuances, because he would always say, like, he's like, "Hey son, like if there was a manual book for um how to be a man, we all could do it. But that's not the case." He was like,
Right.
being a man and being a father is a choice. And he said, I made a choice to be your father. I made a choice to be your coach. I made a choice, you know, to take this role. And he wore it. That's why I call my pop Superman. I was like, man, I don't know how you did it, Dad, but you wore all these hats. And I'm pretty sure for you too, Coach Brian, like that your son don't realize like hat.
Ah,
Uh, of course, we gonna have to deal with.
there
Hold
you
on
There
go.
one
he
second.
is. That's okay.
Let me
Somebody
get
must
back
have called.
Yeah, my nephew will blow my phone up. He'll
in. Hey, oops, lost him again. He'll be back.
He'll be back.
He'll be
Hey,
back.
so Mr. Brown, I see you. Hey Keith, Knowles, let's see
What's
you.
up,
Hey,
Keith? Come on, boy.
Alan Parks. Hey, how are you doing?
calling me.
Thank y'all for coming on.
Well, the biggest thing is that I remember. Can you hear me, Winston? Let's see. He's bouncing back and forth, so hopefully he can hear us.
It's
Real
all
soon.
technology always
All
gets to
right.
us when
Well,
when it
the
gets
thing
good.
is that I remember about Winston until he comes back on was, and I mean, seeing him, I saw a lot of him always with his son,
Yeah.
and that's what people didn't understand. That's how I
So
became
were
friends.
you officiating when he was
I was
coaching him?
officiating. I was doing stuff in the community, and when little Winston Jr. was young, I always saw senior and junior together,
Think I'm back.
and
Hold on one second.
yeah, we good. And I did not have, and that was a big thing for me before Ty was even thought about.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow. I always saw them together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was a fan of his dad and how he was raising Junior. I really was, and I mean that. You know, I was so excited during the Layshaw time to see his dad. I mean, you know, Winston, can you hear me?
I'm trying to get the.
No worries.
No
Yeah, no worries.
worries,
Be good.
no worries.
Take your time.
And you know, and
Oh man,
to
let's see
see
how I can do
Senior was
this.
great. Well,
We
okay,
can
I
hear
can't
you.
even
we
hear.
We
we
can
can
hear
hear
you.
you.
Can you hear us? I think his earbuds went out. Did your earbuds go out?
Are you done?
No.
What's
Go
wrong?
ahead,
Yeah.
you done?
Fucking pissed.
What happened?
Your son put a fucking hole in my wall. And I done broke his fucking
Mute
file,
that.
computer, all that shit is in the fucking trash. I'm letting you know now. Everything is destroyed.
What do you mean put a hole in the wall?
Well, hey, Winston Junior's going through life.
Going through life.
He's going through life. He's going through life. That's
I
it.
think that's I like what he said about you know, just his journey, especially at Kentucky, and then the mindset. I think the biggest thing is the mindset that kids need to learn in this day and age, as far as like how to prepare for the next, you know, for the next portion. Let me see if he's back.
Are you back with us,
Winston? Hello?
Junior?
Hold on.
Okay.
Well, and that's what it makes it kind of his story kind of unique. Is when he was talking about being homeless and because they didn't appear when I saw them.
Right. You don't really see what they was going through when they was going through all that.
You know, that was enlightening. That's a great book.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great book.
Gotcha.
It's you and I.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he you know, hopefully he'll come back on. So let's talk about, since we'll bring up Layshaw. So you guys got like 2 days, 3 days, and the deadline in order to nominate someone for Layshaw for class of 2025 is coming up.
Well, and that's what people got to understand is, you know, the information. Okay, we don't know the information.
We don't know everybody.
You know, I know who I know.
Right.
I'm gonna be honest with you, right? I know who I know.
Yeah.
So don't get frustrated with me if I don't know this is what this certain person did, and that's with the Joneses and Miss Connie as well, is send that information in.
Y'all got 2 days to get someone nominated for the class of 2025.
Yeah.
You know, so Winston, are you back, baby?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Cool. So you're getting busy. So I definitely want to go ahead and jump over to what was it like when you got the call,
and where was you at
about being nominated into the Lexington African American Sports Hall of Fame?
I was at home. What happened? Oh yeah, my Aunt Dawn, my auntie put a she did she put a group text, and um she had said like, hey, this is gonna be a family meeting or something like that. And she was like, it was like a Zoom family meeting. We're gonna do this Zoom call at this time. This is a very important, make sure that the people that's in this group chat tune in or whatever. We got to have a conversation about some things. And I was like, what?
What?
That automatically have you on pins and
Oh, of
needles, so I didn't
course.
really know what was going on. So we was like, oh, and everybody, you can see people chiming in like, is everything okay, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, okay. So we chimed in, and then boom, that's when that happened. And that's when I was like, huh? Like, really? I was like, what? I was shocked for real. So I was like, okay. But I heard
hey, Winston, tell them the truth. The first time I called you, you didn't call me back.
Yeah, I
I
didn't have
don't
the
look up at
number.
the sky.
I didn't have the number. I was like, who is it? Because it's like
Who is this?
numbers that I don't have on my phone, I don't even really answer. And I was like, who is
Yeah.
this coming from?
And
Call
then
from 859. The spam call me. So,
and but I had a quick question going back to the NFL. And I always ask this question because everybody thinks everybody goes to that level. They don't. And that's a special level. And people don't understand that. There's a small group of a fraternity that you're in, and that's the NFL. Let's be real. Where was you at when you found out you were gonna get drafted by Seattle? Was you at home with the family waiting for a call? Were you shooting basketball? And all of a sudden somebody said you got an important phone call. Where was you at?
I was at my agent's house. That's a whole story too. I know my me and my dad had like a thing about that, but that was kind of like my first experience. Like I was kind of like I don't know. I really didn't know what to do at that time. That that's when my oldest son was just born. So I had Jackson, yeah, going on like close, yeah, right. Yeah, I had already turned 22. So I had a newborn baby and like I was nervous. Like it was a lot going on. I had a lot of pressure on me at that time and like I didn't really know what to do. I was having conversations with my agent and stuff, and I guess he kind of wanted me to uh celebrate it with my family, but I think he probably felt like I was overwhelmed with just
Mm,
going through the training for the combine. I went from after I finished Kentucky, uh I skipped out on my last year of my school year in the spring and I decided to come down to Florida to Naples, Florida to train for the combine. So I came all the way down here to Florida to train for that time and I was away from everybody. At that time I had a newborn baby. It was a lot going on at that time. So when I did all that, I was overwhelmed and I wish if I could go back in time, I would have had that with my whole entire family, with my
mhm.
mom and dad and my sister. That's probably one of my biggest regrets that I wish I would have did my draft party. But we still had a draft party and stuff like that. We had like a barbecue and stuff with all the family members and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So it kind of panned out to be what it was at the time. But yeah, I was at my agent's house when I got drafted. I was nervous. I was staying. I was just, but it was. And guess what? This is for all your viewers. You ready for this?
We're ready.
This was almost about to happen in the making, and I was so excited, but I don't think it was God's calling. So the night before the draft, I got a phone call from a Dallas Cowboys scout, and he called me. He said, "Hey, Winston, this is so and so. I'm one of the scouts for the Dallas Cowboys." He said, "We got you on our list of players." He said, "If we're in a position to draft you, we definitely gonna try to have an opportunity to get you." He was just said, "If you decide to go um, undrafted," he said, we want to be one of the first teams on your agent's list to come and sign with us as an undrafted rookie and come into training camp and give you an opportunity to play for the Dallas Cowboys." He was the only scout that called me.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I didn't get that call from the Cowboys, man, and it was crazy. And I was just like,
And
so when I got
And
that
for the
call from,
record, he is a Dallas Cowboys fan, just like me, and his dad is a Dallas Cowboys fan.
so that's y'all's fault.
That's our.
Ele-
That's not our fault.
Election.
That's not our
hey,
fault.
if I would
That's
have got
not our,
drafted by the Cowboys, man, Jerry
it's a
Jones would have
wrap.
loved me. Yeah, he would have loved me. He would have loved me. He would have definitely loved me. I would have been his Michael Parsons, man. He would have loved me. He would have loved me, man.
Okay, so you went from that's so after being homeless at one time, what was your first major purchase after your contract? And what was that
Um,
like getting that first check from the NFL?
man, I was humble, man. I felt like I
Oh,
knew
good.
it seemed like a lot of money, but to me, it was things that I needed. that I didn't have, and I didn't have a car. So I bought a Chrysler 300,
Mm-hmm.
brand new, and at that time I was underage, and you got to be 25 to have a to finance a car and all that kind of stuff. Because if you don't, you got to find another signee to do all that stuff, and then your interest rate is high and all that kind of stuff. So
Your
at that
insurance is
time,
high. Mm-hmm.
yeah, all that. So at that time, um, it was a lot. So it's crazy because I still got my car to this day. I'm riding my baby till the wheels fall off. But that was my first purchase. My first purchase was
Okay.
my vehicle, and I financed it, and it took me about seven. I think I paid it off in 2016, I think. And I was like, "Ooh, I'm glad this car is paid off after all these years." And then when I
That's
sit back and
okay.
think about it, I was like, because my car initially was 40 grand, but they got, when you finance a car, they get more than 40 grand up out you.
Absolutely.
So that was my first purchase. And then after that, man, like I helped my mom out with some couple things and stuff like that. But other than that, man, I let my agent handle a lot of my finances and stuff like that. So he didn't really want me to spend a lot of my money.
Oh,
But
that's good. That's a good
yeah,
thing
but
though.
I was humble though. Like I don't know. I didn't think about playing in the NFL as I loved the game. That was the only thing. Like I loved playing football. I've been playing free football my whole life.
Right.
So getting a check to play, it never that never drove me to
Okay.
continue playing. So when I would get my game checks, I would never even cash them. But I already knew like, hey, you got 90 days to
You have
cash your
90
check.
days.
You got 90 days, so it's being void. So I used to have about 2 months worth of game checks in my locker. And eventually I would just take all my checks, put them to go to my bank, and I'll deposit all my checks in, and I'll leave. And anytime I had to do anything extra with any finances, maneuverability, I would let my agent kind of handle a lot of that stuff, really. But I wish back then, at that time, when I was younger at that time, I wish I had a little bit more knowledge on like credit card financing. I would have probably got me a credit card and really not used a lot of debit cash like that
Mm-hmm.
back then. I would have been a little bit more smart and conscious with learning how to build credit and things like that. So that's like one of the hardest things for athletes at an early age in their career is learning how to build credit, because majority of college students don't have credit at all.
Right.
So just teaching that financial literacy. And I think a lot of colleges starting to have avid classes now
They are.
for people to
Yeah.
learn how to financial literacy and stuff like that. So that's great to have. So I wish we had that back then, because I would have been able to maneuver around a lot more different than learning just things like that. Then you got like the stocks, a market, and learning how to do Roth IRAs and things like that. Like those are things that people need to understand and learn how that stuff works. So just kind of, but I learned a lot of that stuff throughout years. I'm still learning more about that now today. So just kind of getting a little bit more knowledge on financial literacy and stuff. So
Okay.
those are
That's
So
it.
things I
I
try
want
to.
to I want to go back to Layshaw
Let me
because
do this. Okay. Always at the end, this is her show, not mine. I
Mhm.
okay.
always thank you for coming on and for letting me
Okay.
come on.
Okay.
So I'm good to walk away. She's going to ask you a few more questions.
Yes, sir.
Please tell your dad I said hi.
I
I've
will.
always, I've always respected your pops, and I'm so proud of you and your family. Real quickly, as I walk away, the age of your oldest kids are what?
My oldest son is 12 and my youngest is 8.
Okay, I thought I was thinking 11 and that. So what that said is God bless. It is very always a pleasure, and I'll let Terry do her thing. And both of y'all got cowboy issues. I just want to let you know that. Go
In my
I
Niners.
know.
jersey.
Go
Go
Niners.
Niners. Yeah, y'all got championship issues, man.
Oh no, you didn't.
We
Tell
got
me something I don't know.
championship. They get to the championship and can't never win.
Okay,
We,
we're on late show. We're off for that.
we,
Okay, so I want to go back to the Hall of Fame. Um, was it overwhelming? Like the walk me through the whole Hall of Fame because you said you didn't know what to expect. How was that
yeah,
experience?
that was fun. I wasn't expecting to for it to be that kind of gathering like that. It was funny because I felt like that was more of a reunion for my pops because he knew everybody in there. He knew every single soul in there, man.
Did
So
he?
I think it was yeah. So that trip was even though it was a business trip. Um, I kind of looked at that being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I kind of looked at that as a grace from God, but I also looked at that in a way of like that was kind of something I wanted my dad to kind of see and
Mm,
be a part of because I felt like it wasn't just about me.
hmm.
I felt like it was more about him because he's seen. I'm pretty sure he'll tell you he's seen his future and his visualization probably for himself through me. And
Mm,
I think that was kind of like the icing on the cake for him to be like, job well done, son, kind of thing. Like, this is kind of what you deserve. And I told him, I said, man, I ain't gonna lie, Pops. I said, I'd rather be a Hall of Famer in my community than being a Hall of Famer in the National Football League. Because I
really?
said, yeah, I said it means more to me and my family and kids coming through Lexington um more. I made because I'm reachable.
Yes.
I think that's the I think that's the biggest thing is like I never forgot where I came from. That was
Hmm.
something that my dad always told me like regardless of wherever you go in life, never forget where you came from because there's another kid out there just like you that wish they had somebody like you. So that was my biggest thing is like kind of being a role model for kids because I wish I had somebody like me, but I had somebody like my dad that guided me through a lot of things. But if my dad had a Winston around in the
Hmm.
community that was able to help me become a better athlete and things like that to become a better sports player, man, he would have gave up every last dollar to do that. And he still did that when I was young, but a lot of my skills and things came from just playing backyard football and playing basketball in the middle of the street and going up to the park and playing baseball and things like that. So I was just built off of just different skill sets than the majority of these kids. So I always tell these kids all the time, man, y'all lucky, man. Y'all blessed to have these resources that I didn't have and I still made it. So there ain't no
Right.
excuse on there ain't no
Right. For
excuse.
the ones
There
now.
ain't
Yeah.
oh no, there ain't y'all got everything y'all need. All you need is a trainer and that and y'all should be you should have an opportunity
Now,
easily. Ain't
did
no
you play
excuse.
with Shane Israel?
Yes, I did.
Mr.
Sugar
Brown asked,
Shane.
yeah, Mr. Brown asked that question. Did you play with Shane Israel? He has a couple ones, and he said he's got
Yeah, Sugar
a
Shane.
really good question. As a former Indianapolis Colt, what was your take on that quarterback basically saying he was tired and took himself out, Anthony Richardson?
Oh
Right.
man, I was just having this conversation with some friends and stuff and man, you can't do that, man. I think okay, this is how I can say. That's a lesson learned for a lot of athletes to understand what you're up against. Okay.
Okay.
So, rule number one, he should have known better because he's a franchise quarterback at that. He's a minority quarterback at that,
Hmm.
playing for a white owner, and they took a risk on drafting somebody like him that doesn't have a lot of experience
Hmm.
of being a quarterback. That's the third thing. And the fourth thing is I think the Indianapolis Colts organization is doing a bad job in developing the young man because in reality, I feel like if you knew he had raw talent and you knew he was up against the Wolves, you should have had a veteran quarterback, which they have Joe Flacco, but you should have developed him. Like he shouldn't be playing at all. So you should have
Mhm.
had somebody in it like a Kirk Cousins. You should have had somebody like Kirk Cousins on your team where you can develop a young man. So when because he's young, he's the youngest quarterback in the league.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
you develop him. So talent, physical wise, he's ready. Mentally, he's not.
Okay.
Because in reality, bro, you got all the gifts in the world. You're a gifted athlete, but there's no way that you're tired, bro. You can't be.
You
S-
can't be
s-
tired.
no, you know why you can't be tired? Because the guys that are blocking for you, the receivers that's running the routes, the running back that's running the ball for you, bro, they're tired too. So if I was him, I wouldn't even tapped out. You know what I would have did? I would have been in there huffing and puffing. I would have put my knee down and I would look at my teammates and I'd be like, hey, look, guys, I'm tired. I know we all tired, but look, give me one good play, man. Because usually you get TV timeouts.
Right.
So he should have gritted that shit, man. He should have been in shape, bro. You in mid season. You in mid season right now. Like you should be playing your best football right now. So I think he just made a mental mistake. I think I wish somebody and to be honest with you, it's the coach's fault for putting Anthony Richardson in that position.
Mm.
Because regardless on if that situation happened, that same night, one of y'all PR guys should have came to Anthony and be like, "Hey, Anthony, look, you about to go in here and do this interview. They're gonna ask you about this head tap thing and you coming out. My advice is don't say you was tired. Make up something. Say like I had the wind knocked out of me or something. And I had to come out. Like I felt like I was gonna pass out. Some you should have
Mhm.
said something bizarre to kind of play Russian roulette with the media. I wouldn't have said that. He said that comfortable, like, man, I was tired, man. Shoot, I ain't gonna lie. He was real. That's
He
how
was
he
real
really
with it.
he was real
That's
with
how
it.
he felt.
And to people, they're gonna be like, they're gonna backtrack. They're gonna be like, hold on. How the hell you tired? You're the quarterback. Bro, you're the most athletic player on your team. Two, three, you should have slid. And then they're gonna look at like, well, we had an opportunity to win this game, but instead of you running out of bounds, you want to try to get extra yards, bro. And he made a mental mistake, so they backtracking. Now you 2 for 15. You did this, you did this. Like you made poor decisions throughout the game. And even if you still had a bad game, we still had an opportunity to win. They're gonna throw him the book. So soon as
Right.
he go in there and talk to media, they're gonna be
It's a
like,
wrap.
yo, you're the franchise quarterback. You're the fourth pick in the draft. This is your second year. Basically, this is your rookie year because you was hurt all last year. So you got something to prove because now he's a he's against Anthony Richardson is against pressure because now
Mhm.
you see Jaden Daniels playing good as a rookie.
Yeah.
You see your boy from Houston, second year, he's playing good. So now
CJ Stroud. Mhm.
you seeing performance on younger quarterbacks playing good. And in reality, he has the most talent. He has the most upside because they don't have a lot of stuff that he has. But the difference with what they got that Anthony Richards don't have is the mentality. You
Yeah, I
know?
mean, the game is mental. As a coach, I think we probably preach that more than probably anything else is just how mental the game is.
Yes,
Absolutely.
ma'am.
Okay, did you play with Ben Revere at Catholic?
Yeah, Ben Rivera was that man was a freak of nature. I try to I try to recruit him on our track team, man, but he didn't want to do it, man. He was a great skilled athlete though, for real. I'm not surprised that he went to the MLB because he was that good.
Right. You weren't surprised at all? Yeah, that
No,
was
I
another
wasn't
good question, Mr. Brown.
no, I'm
Um,
not surprised at
Mr. Brown
all.
said that he grew up with your uncles. And did your uncle Rodney give you any football pointers that played at Henry Clay? And he said, did they call
Nah.
your dad Mata? What did they call
Oh,
your dad?
like Mater.
Maida?
Yeah,
Maida?
all my cousins and stuff call my daddy Uncle Mater.
Uncle Maida?
They said they gave him a nickname. They call him tomato, or like tomato or something like that. Like they had like a little thing or something like that. That's how he got his name, Uncle Mater. But yeah, nah, my uncle Ronnie didn't give me really no high school point. My uncle little boy, uh, my uncle, his name is Derek Guy. He was the one that he went to Henry Clay with my dad. He was the one that kind of gave me a lot of pointers and
A lot of
stuff like
pointers.
that. So
Okay.
yeah.
So who did you grow up um here in the community in Lexington. So you get inducted to the Hall of Fame. Who do you need to who needs to be inducted that you know of that hasn't been?
That's
Because we got 2
tough.
days. People got 2 days, today and tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day in order to put in a nomination for our class of 2025 for next year. Who needs to be in?
I don't know. I think you got two people already done. You got Shelvin Mack got
Yes.
inducted. Brianna Green
Yes.
got inducted. Man, I couldn't even tell you to be
Okay.
who's
That's
does it. Yeah.
okay.
Um.
Okay. Well, we're
Oh
gonna
yeah,
wrap
I
it
could
up.
tell. I can tell
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Um. Shane Boyd.
Okay. His name came up. Okay.
Yeah,
Shane Boy.
Shane. Yeah, Shane Boyd definitely needs to be inducted into
Okay.
the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because he was a big part. He was a big part um of my life, especially helping me when I was in the league.
Okay.
He used to mentor me and stuff like that. And I remember he invited me one year when I was in the NFL. He invited me to go to Mexico with him one year, and we went to Mexico. It was one of his former teammates at the time. Uh, he played with for the Arizona Cardinals, and we went out there. We did like charity stuff. So we did a lot of we did like flag football and all kind of stuff. So we did a lot of charity things for the community in Mexico, in Monterrey, Mexico. I think it's the capital of Mexico. So I think at that time, his friend that was the player, he was Mexican. He was from the Mexican culture. I think he was trying to run for governor for his hometown. So
Hmm.
that was an experience. But Shane, man, you gotta think Shane went to Kentucky. Shane got
He
drafted
did.
in the ML. Shane
Okay.
got drafted
Yeah.
in the
Oh, his name
MLB.
definitely came up.
Yeah,
Okay.
Shane played like what 8 years in the NFL.
Oh, did he? Okay, cool.
Yeah, Shane went
Okay,
to.
cool.
Shane played for the Arizona Cardinals. He played for the Houston Texans and Tennessee Titans.
Okay.
I think he said his favorite player is Aaron McNair. Steve McNair was
Steve
his, I think
McNair.
his favorite, yeah, because he wore number 9 in the league. That was his favorite number.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay,
he's definitely.
so you play safety in the NFL?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so who was the hardest person to guard?
Man, Tony Gonzalez. I remember my rookie year when I was with the Seattle Seahawks. We made it to the playoffs, the second round of the playoffs against the Atlanta Falcons. We went to Atlanta, and that was the year they went to the Super Bowl. They had Matt Ryan, they had Julio Jones, Tony
Mm,
Gonzalez, Roddy White. Man, they had a great squad, and
they were loaded.
yeah, they was loaded that year. And we lost. Unfortunately, we lost to a last second field goal. But at the end of the game, man, I ran up to Tony. I shook his hand, man. I said, Tony, man. I said, my name is Winston. I said, I'm a rookie in the league. I said, uh, I said, man, it's a pleasure meeting you. I said, you're one of my favorite players growing up as a kid. Like he was my favorite tight end growing up as a kid. Like, I love
Okay.
me some Tony Gonzalez because I liked the Chiefs growing up. I remember that
Hmm.
whole team that he was with. So
Hmm.
like I shook his hand and but Tony, he's huge, bro. His hands, when I shook his hands, man, I was like, man, this man played in the league. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a legend. Like it was an honor to play,
Hmm.
and it was just crazy, man. Like I had a chance to play against some of my favorite players
Some
and
of your
stuff
favorite
growing up as a
players.
kid. Yeah, yeah,
So besides
it was
Tony
like a dream come
Gonzalez,
true.
who were you was there anybody else that you were starstruck with when you or you couldn't believe that you were on the sharing the same field with?
Man, Tom Brady. Man, I seen Tom Brady. It was my rookie year. Tom Brady. We played against them in was it playoff? I can't remember. Man, we played against them, man, and I was like, man, this is Tom Brady. I was like, man, Tom Brady look big in person, man. Like he looked big with the uniform on. I was like Tom Brady, every bit of 6'4", man. He was huge.
Oh, is he?
It was, yeah, Tom Brady big. He lean though, he's skinny, but he
That
big.
should be Atlanta that year. Was that the year when Atlanta was up 3 touchdowns and Tom came back and beat them?
Oh yeah, Tom Brady had that LeBron James
That was
Miami
that year,
Heat look
wasn't
in
it?
his, yeah, he had that LeBron James Miami Heat look in his eyes. When that game came on and that man just turned into a demigod and went crazy and came back and beat them. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Atlanta ain't gonna never recover from that.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. So you met some good players. So listen, thank you. I thank you. I knew your story was going to be amazing. We can't
Yes,
wait until
ma'am.
your book comes out. I hope I hope you come back every year. Let us see you at least once a year and come back for the Hall of Fame every year so we can see you in
Yeah, I
person.
know.
I got to give you my son's number. So my son plays the same position. He kind of walked in the same footsteps as you did. His dad was very instrumental in his life, was his coach. And he got the opportunity to, from Lexington, got the opportunity to play at Kentucky. He's playing safety. So you guys, I'm pretty sure I would love for you to, reach out to my son and just, give him some pointers that we can't give him.
Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
but he'll listen to you, but he's not going to listen to us half the time. Um, it's
Don't
just
y'all
kids
kids
these
do
days.
that? Y'all do,
That's what
do
they
that,
do
yeah.
now. Yes, and that would just be nice because his desire is to go to the league and play in the league, and so he definitely could probably use some pointers on what to do to prepare himself. Like you said, there was a lot of preparation that you didn't have, especially now that you can look back on there. Now, before we leave, is there anything that you wanted to say publicly that you've never had the opportunity to say?
Um, no, not really, man. I think God put me here for a reason. Sometimes I ask myself, what reason is it? But I think the years and the older I get, I think I start to understand, like, things of why he did what he did, and I'm just fortunate enough to be one of the best players to ever come out of state of Kentucky, and especially the city of
Absolutely.
Lexington. So I'm happy about that. I think my dad always used to tell me, man, y'all, I used to always take things as a humble approach, Miss Bryant, and
Of course.
I never really sat back and just kind of gave myself on a pat of the back or just kind of be complacent with certain things because I always felt like I wanted more.
Hmm.
So I think now that I'm starting to see how life is starting to unfold for me and being able to be a voice and help other people and things like that. Um, I think
Jaguar.
God
Jag
just basically
Jag
LC
said,
stand.
"LC stand up."
Hey, Coach Sanders, man, he's tell him he's a champion. He's a champion coach too, man. He used hey, for real though, coach. It's funny cause Jag said that, man. He used to help me out a lot too at Catholic, man. He kept a lot of coaches, a lot of people with big parts of my life, man. And look, I know Coach Jaguar Sanders came in and I used to go see him play. Coach Sanders used to play for the Lexington Horsemen when they had
Mhm.
the Horsemen at the time, and him and
Him and
Coach Lu,
JT
yeah,
Haskins,
JT, that's who I really like. Coach Haskins, man.
Coach Haskins.
JT was my guy, man. I used to love go see him play. I used to see Jaguar Sanders play. I used to see Harry Lewis play receiver coach. Man, so like it was cool being around a lot of coaches and men like that for real. So they helped me out a lot. So it's funny he said that.
Well, I'm glad you got a chance to get some shout. Any other shout outs you want to give before we go?
Nah, man. Shout out to 859, baby. Hey,
Let's
once a
go.
Wildcat, always a Wildcat. Once a knight, always a knight, and once a warrior, always a warrior.
I love it. So I'm gonna end the stream. Don't log off, but I'm gonna end the stream. But for everybody, make sure if you are going to the Lexington African American Hall of Fame, if there's somebody that you want nominated, the last day to nominate is going to be tomorrow. You can go to layshoff.com and there should be a nomination form. but make sure you give us detailed information on that so that we can do our own research and due diligence, because a lot of people don't know these people that you nominate, and we just can't go over vague information. And so we I think even with you, I think there's like 200 people, 300, and then we narrow that down to about 15 or 25 names. And so we got to be very, very detailed in order to be able to get that nomination form in. And for those of you that like the Tennessee Titans, my women's team, tomorrow's also the last day to get tickets. You can actually go to a Titans game and go watch my women play after the Titans for only $40 for both games. And tomorrow, that's the last day for that too, and that's on derbycity.com. Or if you go to my Facebook page, I have it listed, but tomorrow's the last day for that too. Anyway, guys, thank y'all all for coming on there. Shout out to Layshoff and the Lexington African American Sports Hall of Fame for sponsoring tonight's episode. And for that, y'all have a good one. Good day. Don't log off, Winston.